Look at me, sure. I'm the captain.
Captain James! Howe!
Ahoy there, welcome to Rated Aargh. Thank you for joining us on another adventure as we chart our course through the realms of cinematic piracy. Today we're taking a look through our spyglass at the second installment of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, Dead Man's Chest. My name is Ryan, and please join me in welcoming my co-captains, Christian and Braxton. Guys, how are y'all doing?
Davy Jones and me. Okay.
Well, he
Before
did
we were
it.
recording, we were discussing writing a parody song of Mr. Jones by Counting Crows about Davy Jones in this film.
Yes, you are.
I wouldn't use the word discussing.
We were just singing the song and inserting.
But wait, it wasn't the whole song. It was literally just the beginning
It was-
of Davy Jones and me. That was the only thing that came out of that whole thing.
Anyway, it's a work in progress, but I'm good. I'm good.
Oh man, Christian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this movie. This is my favorite
Yeah, I know.
so far. And
Ooh.
I'm just excited to hopefully carry over to At World's End, which I don't want to look ahead too far, but I know Braxton hasn't seen the whole thing. And when you pair this movie with that movie, it's just awesome. Piratiness all around. Really cool. So I had fun watching this movie.
Yeah.
I've seen it, I don't know, 30, 40 times maybe. I would say it
Really?
has
You've
like,
seen it that many times?
yeah, it's not like Dumb and Dumber numbers, but in
Uh-huh.
terms of like a non-comedy, it's way up there.
Yeah.
That's a big
I mean,
deal.
this is
Yeah.
a good one to watch a lot. And I know I think whenever we were talking about doing this one at some point, I think you said this was one of your favorite movies just in general. So,
I would say yes. It came out at that time where I was starting to get a big interest in movies. So I guess 2006, I would have been about 10.
mhm.
And this game, like, inspired a lot. I had the DVD set, not just the DVD set, but the DVD set that came with like 2 extra DVDs with commentary and behind the scenes stuff and pirate history. And so this movie, like, inspired a lot of my interest in pirates and the stories that surround them. So this movie did a lot. I had the video game on PSP. That was like the very first game that I got on PSP.
Heck yeah.
Yeah,
What did you
saw that
do
on the
on
shelf
the
and you were
game
like,
on PSP?
The game was, I believe it was called the same name. I think it was Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. And you basically just went around to different, it was like really vague scenes from the movie. Like there were
that describes
scenes on a
every
ship.
like licensed game, you know?
There were scenes inside of that kind of like fortification or whatever that castle was in the beginning. That it was, I think it was like a fort, but you had to like fight your way out of it. It was very.
Before you get in the box?
I do not remember the box. I will have to look up some gameplay or figure out how I can get my hands on that game again. But it was awesome. You fought a lot of skeletons, I think. I think they like loosely combined a little bit of the storyline from the first movie and this one.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. That's cool.
This is an important movie.
I'm pretty sure all of us have seen this one before. Is that right?
I'd seen it 1 or 2 times before. I
Okay.
think.
I've seen
On
it a couple.
FX.
Not as many as Christian, but I have seen it a couple times.
Because they have the movies.
FX
is-
has the movies. Well, I guess before we get too far into this episode, Braxton, do you recommend that people watch this before getting too far into the episode?
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you've never seen it before,
if you've
for
seen it as many
sure.
times as Christian, you know, there's no need to watch it right before. You'll be right at home with it.
If you've never seen it before, though, this is one that
You
I would
absolutely-
definitely recommend watching. And I mean, you could probably watch the episode and then watch it after the fact if you really wanted to. But for the context of much of the things that we're going to talk about in this episode, it's probably pretty important to watch the movie beforehand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest was released on July 7th, 2006 with a budget of $225 million, and it had a worldwide box office of $1.06 billion. It had an opening weekend of $135 million.
Oh my
it's pretty
God.
solid. Pretty solid numbers there for Dead Man's Chest, which, I mean, it is a sequel. The first movie is very well loved. So
people are already going to come.
Yeah, people are going to come. But then when it's as good as this one is as a sequel, I mean,
you get the word of mouth of people being like, "Oh, you got to go see the new."
Oh yeah, and you can understand why it would have a $1 billion box office. Rotten Tomatoes has this at a 53% critic score and a 72% audience score. It is a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and it is a 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Honestly, I think all of those are too low for this movie. I mean, I think you could easily be in, the 80s or 90s on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think Letterboxd, I was very surprised that this is not much different than The Fog that we did last month. Because I think as a movie, The Fog is great. And I'm sure like there's lots of horror fans out there that really love The Fog. But I feel like this as a movie is potentially quite a bit better than The Fog.
I agree.
So I was very surprised on that being a 3.6 out of 5. Okay, I do have a description, and this one is from Disney Plus, and I think Disney Plus is the one that started this whole thing because they have the most vague descriptions of any streaming service. So the description on Disney Plus. What if
the description just said squid head or octopus head?
It's not much. You're not far off. So the description on Disney Plus for Dead Man's Chest is Captain Jack Sparrow must seize the dead man's chest to cheat death. They literally just put the title of the movie in the description.
Wait,
as if that explains to anyone what the dead man's chest is. Captain Jack Sparrow must seize the dead man's chest to cheat death.
I don't even know if that's what it's about, though. I mean, yes, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't even say cheating death is what he's doing. Because isn't he trying to not have to be on the Dutchman ship? Which is being alive, but it's not. I don't know. There's a lot of technicalities in Pirates of the Caribbean as being alive.
I think
or
you're
dead.
Technically dead if you're on the ship. I think that is like part of the prerequisite for being on the Flying Dutchman is that you are dead or you offer up your soul.
You would have died.
You would have died.
So you give away your soul. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of part of the deal here. And I don't really have a whole lot about the movie. I was kind of rushing to try to get anything together for this.
Yeah.
So I don't have a whole lot of where it was filmed and all this stuff. I do know that essentially there was a hurricane that came through and wiped out almost all of the set they used for the first movie, Curse of the Black Pearl. The set was basically destroyed and they had to rebuild everything for this movie and At World's End, which was then immediately shot back to back with this movie.
Was it? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When did At World's End come out? 07? Or 08?
I believe 07, yes.
Dang.
Yeah, 2007. Okay. So, and I will say, I know we've talked about it on the first one. We've talked about it in a couple of these movies that we talked about. July 7th is a great release date for a pirate movie. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I was thinking that when you said July 7th. I was like, I would go see this movie on July 7th.
Absolutely. I guess let's just go ahead and Christian, I'm gonna throw it to you, and you can give us some historical check here for Dead Man's Chest because it's kind of all over the place. I mean, we've talked about how the first one is pretty fantastical, a lot of fantasy going on. This one might be even more so.
Down,
Well, I remember historical in the sense of 2006. I remember when this came out. And the one thing that I remember the media talking about in this movie, I don't remember reviews. I don't remember cast interviews or anything. The only thing I remember is that it was such a controversy that that a movie would have a budget that big. I remember they said the same thing about At World's End, and they were like, "Our movie budget's getting out of control." I remember being driven to school one morning, and like on the local talk radio, it was like Kid Craddock in the Morning or something, and they were like, "This is wild. How do you spend three? Yeah, they were like, how do you spend $300 million on a movie?" And now with Marvel, that's like completely normalized, and you can make amazing returns on that.
Oh, absolutely. But and that's not even that's not even just the superhero genre. Like we've seen some crazy budgets for some of these movies. Like the F1 movie that's coming out sometime next year, I think, is reported like a $350 million budget, which seems insane.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, something interesting that I think about is when you say that, right, and the rate of the amount of budget that they spent on this movie and what they were rewarded with box office returns. I think the big difference between now and today is then you could just ask, okay, how could you have a budget this big on a movie? And then if you then went and saw Dead Man's Chest, you'd be like, okay, that was a great film. And
Absolutely.
The CGI looked great. And all the practical stuff looked great. And you'd leave satisfied. Now the problem is the budgets are this or higher, and you go see the movie, and me and Ryan a lot of times are asking when we leave these movies is, where was the money spent? Because
the
CGI
was it
doesn't look
spent
that
on
great.
Cases of V8 that was then stored in a room, or like,
right?
Like, what did they do with all that money? Because I mean, there's some stuff we've watched that is high budget that looks terrible, and it's like shot terribly, it's edited terribly. Like, it's like, did you really pay people to make this movie? Like, millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah. So this movie had a big budget, and it used it extremely well, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It did.
Now, for the way back history, so let's go back to, I believe that this movie takes place, you could probably check this, but I would guess that it took place between, I would say they would have it set between the 1720s and 1730s. So that was like at the very end of what's known as the golden age of piracy.
Yeah, because they mentioned that in the first and the second movie.
Yeah, they make several references to that in the movie, that like there is this British.
It's the beginning of the British, the rise of the British Empire, of the sun never sets era.
It's like the beginning of that like major crackdown on punishing piracy, and that is something that actually did happen in terms of the like costumes, in terms of the outfits, in terms of the weaponry and the ships. I know because I had the multiple DVD set. I know that they actually had some interviews with a lot of the consultants on the film. They probably had hundreds of consultants. They talked to historians. They talked to local experts, folklorists, to like really nail down the feel, nail down costumes. I think one of those behind the scenes featurettes was about like the different types of swords that they used in the filming and how those were created. A lot of the budget went to basically building some ships from scratch that were modified. I think one of the main wasn't the Black Pearl like built around a tugboat. So
like a regular boat. Mm-hmm.
It was mobile. So
I think I saw something where they had 4 ships at their disposal for this one to kind of use in various places.
That's insane. So that's probably quite a bit of the budget. It all seemed very accurate, and we did some research. So a lot of this hinges on the Flying Dutchman and
Davy Jones himself being introduced into the story.
What I did not know was that those things had not been connected until really the 21st century. And so I think, Braxton, you know the timeline, but this movie came out in 2006. So what was the official connection point of those two different legends? Because from what we found, Davy Jones and the Flying Dutchman were similar in that they were both seen as like harbingers of death.
Right. Superstitions of sailors.
Superstitions, and those go back centuries, but they had not been connected. And in this movie, Davy Jones is the captain of the Flying Dutchman. But in reality, that is a modern kind of merging of the two.
Right. So essentially, from what my very quick Wikipedia research, so they were separate, but then I think there was an opera in the 1800s that I can't find it being clear if it conflated the two, because I don't think it was Davy Jones, but I think it was somehow about the man who used the Flying Dutchman, and into that opera was introduced the concept of, he could go on land every X many years and look for a lover, and if he found one, he could be freed from being tied to the ship. So I think they actually say in the making of this movie that it was partially inspired by that adaptation, right? But there was a movie in 1951 that was sort of vaguely a similar story, but I think in that movie they use the name Davy Jones. Maybe. Or
okay.
No, they don't. The Flying Dutchman becomes the name of the man. Right?
The name of the man, not the ship? Exactly.
And that's where it starts to kind of cross over, right? And then in 1999, in an episode in the first season of SpongeBob SquarePants, of which we're all aware, it wasn't even his first physical appearance, but in the episode where they think Squidward dies and is a ghost, they look in a comic book that describes the Flying Dutchman. And it shows the picture of what we're going to see, the actual character later, right? The green ghost with the little tail. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't call him Davy Jones. It calls him the Flying Dutchman, the ghost. So I think it's highly possible that the nexus of all these things was SpongeBob SquarePants.
Well, and they do, in a SpongeBob episode, reference Davy Jones' locker.
Yes, because he opens it up and he says these are his socks. He works out a lot.
And it's stinky.
And there's stinky stench lines floating off of the.
So there is some sort of a connection there.
Yeah. And there's also interesting that they combined it even more in this movie, because the Flying Dutchman essentially was just a ghost ship legend. But how they combined it was they took the Flying Dutchman and essentially combined that with the Davy Jones locker concept, which Davy Jones locker just was essentially a euphemism for saying that someone had drowned or died at sea. That they're being kept, not necessarily, there wasn't necessarily a negative connotation, like they weren't being trapped like in the movie, but it basically means that their souls or their body are being kept in the sea.
Yeah. Well,
and Davy Jones was, do you sort of have the description of Davy Jones, Christian? Of the separate legend of him?
Yeah, so there's a separate legend of Davy Jones, although it's sometimes described as David Jones, kind of like in the David Crockett turning into Davy Crockett through a TV show.
David Crockett, king on the wild frontier.
The kind of most commonly associated captain with the Flying Dutchman is someone named Captain Van der Decken, who was working for the Dutch East India Company. That is the creation of a very old novel, I believe. Let me find this. So Davy Jones is essentially, it started popping up in British and Dutch kind of sailor stories. In the movie, he is kind of this anthropomorphic octopus, but you find out that there is this curse that is, I mean, the coolest thing ever. This movie did, like, with the consultants and the historians and the storytellers that they got involved, they somehow came up with this idea to take a little piece of probably 100 different legends and stories.
Right.
And among that is this concept of Davy Jones's locker. And so what that means in terms of this movie was that if you owe a debt to Davy Jones, if you die in a shipwreck, you are then like shepherded into his crew, and you owe him 100 years of servitude. And so your options were either like go into the abyss or give 100 years servitude on this evil, cursed pirate ship. And along the way, you would eventually be morphing into different marine animals. You would become like one with the coral. You would blend in with the ocean.
I guess it is. You're sort of becoming part of the ocean, basically.
Yeah, it's becoming one with the ocean. So the first reference to Davy Jones's locker dates back to the 1700s. It was a popular superstition among sailors and pirates. However, we don't really know the direct origin of Davy Jones. There's different groups of thought. In one, it's thought to reference a pirate by the name of David Jones who sailed the Indian Ocean in the 1630s. However, this guy was not well known at all. So it's possible that his story and his name was passed down, but he was not necessarily that notable. There's also possibly a connection to a man who may have been named Davy Jones, who ran a British pub. He was said to make his customers drunk and imprison them in his ale locker. That is one version. There's also another version that says he would give them a poisoned rum and they would be shanghaied. They would be forced to work on a ship. He would be in cahoots with whatever captain. That is one version. However, the most kind of credible explanation comes from linguists. And so they've traced Davy to Saint David, who is the patron saint of Wales. And Welsh sailors would commonly, prey upon Saint David for protection. And they would often reference the story of Jonah, and that Jonah, who was eaten by a whale in the biblical story and kind of believed to have been taken to the bottom of some body of water. They believe that eventually morphed into Jones. So Davy Jones is a reference to Saint David and Jonah. And that makes a little bit of sense to me. There's also a potential connection that Davy may reference Duppy. That was a Caribbean folktale of a malevolent ghost that would essentially float on top of the water. And a lot of the descriptions of Davy Jones in the Caribbean say that it would arrive, it was a spirit of a man, like an evil demon, this evil spirit that would float on top of the water and reveal itself to a ship or reveal itself to an island the day before something very bad would happen. So that would be like a hurricane, a shipwreck. It was kind of like a
omen.
Yeah, like a really bad omen. And so this is the first time, I guess, in public lore through SpongeBob and this movie that it becomes more of a physical manifestation, that there is like a physical captain. It's not necessarily a ghostly image, but that is what I found. We don't really know where exactly it comes from. We know that it dates way back. In the early 1700s, there are mentions in captain's logs and sailors' journals of them fearing running into Davy Jones and becoming part of Davy Jones's locker. Davy Jones's locker reference first found in 1803 in a naval chronicle. That is about all that we know. So I think that this is an understudied thing. This may be another episode that we can dive into fully, because I think there's some stuff in here that still has yet to be dug up that we could find.
Yeah, it could be interesting.
Interesting.
So I did see one other thing about his the ship that they used in this movie. that it is the Flying Dutchman was believed to be a Dutch ship called a fleet or whatever, how you say it, Dutch.
Can you say that again?
Fluyt, a fleet.
Can you say that again?
Fleet. I have to make my mouth be like this when I say it. Fleet. But in the movie, it's partially that, but it's also partially based off a ship called the Vasa.
Okay.
Because when I saw the ship, I was like, "Oh my god, it looks so cool!" Because it's like gigantic. Like it has to have been based off of like one of the biggest ships that has ever existed. Because it looks huge, like the number of cannons and like the size of the sails and everything.
Yeah.
But okay, Christian, you might know about this, and we may have talked about it before on an episode. But apparently, the Vasa was a Swedish ship constructed in like the 1620s. It was like commissioned by the king, and apparently at the time it would have been one of the most like heavily armed and gigantic ships like in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because of that, it's like balance was off.
Yeah.
And they launched it, and when they launched it, like a breeze like blew it over, and it sunk immediately.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I knew you'd think that was funny.
Oh, that's great.
There are several.
But it also was
ships.
one of the best archaeological expeditions because they knew from history that it was right there in the harbor. So later they like dug the whole thing up and it's in a museum now.
Mhm.
That's cool. Heck yeah.
There are a lot of smaller ships used in this movie that might have been adapted here and there to be period accurate, but there are a lot still in existence. I know one is in a marina in Vancouver, or is Seattle or Vancouver? I think it might be Vancouver. That was used. It was like a sloop used in the first movie, I believe.
Yeah.
I do have a fun fact here. So Johnny Depp was a frequent collaborator with a famous director, none other than Mr. Tim Burton. And Tim Burton actually contributed some of the conceptual designs of several crew members aboard the Flying Dutchman. I've got a little bit of a clip that we can look at to kind of introduce like the Davy Jones and a little bit of the crew. And so let's go ahead and take a look at that clip.
5 men still alive.
Hammerhead guy is crazy looking.
Yeah. Hammerhead guy situation is crazy.
I did not say whether he had a hand in like the character design of Davy Jones himself, but
okay, this pipe is cool.
it is cool.
Do you feel dead? Do you feel that dark abyss? I can offer you an escape.
Like,
So I've there's
the
a
way
that,
his inflection is so interesting. Like it makes you hang on every word.
it does, and you know I hadn't watched this movie in a long time, and hearing Bill Nighy's voice, who plays Davy Jones, threw me off a little bit. Like I did not remember him sounding that way because he's got like a I think he said Scottish accent, and it's kind of like a higher pitch. Like you almost think when you see Davy Jones for the first time, he's gonna come up and he's gonna have this deep bellowing voice, and he doesn't. It's like it's kind of an interesting vocal choice. Casting
and he's holding
Bill
his
Nighy.
nose.
It does kind of sound
wet.
like that. Yeah, it does kind of sound like that. But I mean, the character design in this movie is like it is really freaking cool. I mean, especially when they're on the ship and you see Will when they're playing liar's dice or whatever it may have been. Like the character design on all these guys is crazy, and so many of them are just background characters, and there's no telling how much time went into creating these different, crew members. And it's wild how much time that they put into this. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff about the CGI in this movie, specifically about Davy Jones, but just in general. And there's a really good behind the scenes video on YouTube as well, that I found, and it's about 12 and a half minutes long. I've cut it down to like 2.5 or so, just kind of the beginning of it. So if you want to go watch this after the fact, I would definitely recommend doing that. But it's very interesting. I kind of more focused on just the overall character of Davy Jones and kind of how that they built him, which is kind of what the beginning of it focuses on, but it gets more into like the motion capture and how that they like invented some new technology for this movie. So let's take a look at the behind the scenes.
I challenge Davy Jones.
That's so many characters that just have very little significance. Yeah. This part is super cool. We'll take a look at the Liar's Die stuff in a minute just by itself.
I only bet on what's dearest to a man's heart. Else there's no way to tell if he's bluffing.
That's
a man
funny.
is willing to risk or not.
The layers are pretty cool when they paint them off, and then you just see Bill Nighy sitting there with dots all over him.
Yeah.
Let's try it again. One more time. I'll say one more time right away.
Oh, look at the claw hand. It's
Create
cool.
the same kind of fun and environment that you had in the first movie.
Freaking
And since
Jerry
we created
Bruckheimer,
these
man.
wonderful pirates that turned into
Guy
skulls.
just makes gold.
Because they were cursed.
Yeah, he does.
We had to find something else to replace that.
Davy Jones is wounded so deeply. He's famous in mythology for having torn out his own heart in an effort to never feel that way again.
100 years before the mast. Will ye sell?
Oh, well, sir.
Davy Jones is this marvelous character that was created by Gore and Ted and Terry and animated with the geniuses up at Industrial Light and Magic.
We made the decision on this film to cast actors to play the parts. They're in the shots playing the characters, and we're going to put our CG versions over the top of them.
Liar!
Bill Nighy makes him a real character, and yet you really can't see the real actor.
He looks
So that's a
crazy,
very
man, with all those
difficult
dots
thing
and
to do.
stuff on
When
his
you see
face.
it,
That's what's
you
crazy
realize
is even in
how brilliant
2006,
he pulls this off.
they're able to get his facial acting
when
really
Bill Nighy
well.
was cast. We wanted to incorporate his face into it. So we ended up mimicking a lot of the signature features in his face. Very high cheekbones, sort of elongated, chiseled jaw, but then the jaw has to kind of flourish out into this massive tentacles.
So we started breaking apart how we were going to come up with translating from the artwork to a three-dimensional model. So we start with scanning the actors, and that's a process where you're collecting three-dimensional information.
They put you on the platform and you can see your body forming on the computer screen, so you're now cyber scanned.
It was kind of funny. They
So
made
they
him
then have
stand,
what they
like,
call
with his
all of
arms
your
out like that.
information. They have all of your data.
And from there, it branches out into a lot of different departments.
Our job is to give it the
This guy was
textural
cool.
quality. So
When I
in
watched
looking
this
for
first
Davy
time.
Jones' skin, one of the other painters was getting coffee, threw his coffee cup away, looked in the trash can, and there was a coffee-stained styrofoam cup. And he just thought it looked interesting, so he took it, scanned it in the flatbed scanner, brought it into Photoshop. I saw him using it, and I said, "Hey, Ron, what's that? It looks great." And he's like, "Oh, it's a dirty coffee cup." And so I brought that in. What we're looking at here is the actual result of scanning a chunk of that dirty coffee cup. And you can see if I turn the layer on and off, it takes what's kind of a milky, not too defined image and turns it into more of an interesting pattern. All that work
Really
with
cool
the
how they use the
coffee-stained
texture for
styrofoam
that.
cup gets applied right here on the face of Davy Jones, right here.
This is all part of the pre-production, and then eventually you're getting into shots.
Background action and action!
Then you're a poor captain, but a captain nonetheless.
Have you not introduced yourself all these years as Captain Jack Sparrow?
If you start with
John
a really good cast actor like Bill Nighy, he owns that performance.
You can condemn an
He's in a lot of the behind the scenes of the Star Wars prequels.
to a lifetime of
Who is?
solitude and your
John
name
Knoll.
while you
Oh, really?
After my LM.
Yep. Bill Nighy's so good, dude.
So we still
He's
in blood?
very Shakespearean.
Ink.
My working costume is a deeply attractive grey tracksuit.
Who
is hopping around with a load of dots all over him, which I'm sure wasn't how Gore sold it to him in the first place when he said, hey, who doesn't want to be a pirate? Pirates are really cool and you've got to wear that and that's really not cool.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
The deal where I thought it was really fascinating where the guy took the texture of a coffee cup that was in the trash and just takes it out and is like, oh, I'm going to scan this and we'll add it to like his tentacles as a texture. And it just like, I don't know, it added a layer that they were missing. It was really, really cool. I don't know, man, all that VFX stuff is kind of over my head most of the time. Like those guys make magic out of nothing. And it is crazy.
Now, something I forgot about John Knoll. Photoshop was mentioned in this about them, pulling the styrofoam cup into Photoshop.
Yeah.
John Knoll invented Photoshop.
Oh, did he really? That's crazy.
Him and his brother invented Photoshop in like 1987.
Wow.
So that's pretty wild.
That's crazy. Wow. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. Oh man, there's so many like big moments in this movie too. Like it just kind of is one thing after another, it seems like.
Which I have to say, if you ask me to retell the plot of this movie right now, I wouldn't be able to. I have to say it's sort of confusing. Not to say like if I had it laid out to me and explained it again, like I would understand it. But like to be able to recount like what happened, I wouldn't be able to do it as well as the first movie.
Okay. Do you want to give it a shot?
No. The main thing I did write in one of my notes was, why did Jack give Will to Davy Jones?
Okay, so there's
like I understood why, but like why Will and why did he trick him?
So I think part of it is that he knew that Will's dad was on the Flying Dutchman. Mm-hmm. I also think he sees Will sort of as a threat because he himself kind of is in love with Elizabeth Swann.
True.
And so I think if he, got rid of him, that would open it up where, she's only got one option now. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe there was some of that at play. I also think at some point he just completely separates himself from everyone around him and says, I don't care. I got to take care of myself. And if it's sacrificing, his crew, Will, doesn't matter. Like he's going to do whatever it takes to keep himself from his fate, which is ultimately, that he is going to be part of Davy Jones' crew if he's not able to, handle all the souls and stuff correctly. I also kind of wondered if maybe it had something to do with the fact that Will is just extremely cunning, and they needed to know where the key is. And so maybe that had something to do with it. Yeah. Because if anyone, I think maybe I don't know. I don't know this for sure, but I get the feeling that he kind of thinks of Will as, if anyone can do this and find this key that we need, it's going to be Will. And because, he's been around Davy Jones some, I think, and, didn't know where the key was. And ultimately, Will finds out where it is and is able to steal it. But it's a pretty interesting plot, I would say, just as a whole. I mean, you have Davy Jones and his crew, and he's trying to take Jack with him, but Jack makes a deal with him where if he can trade 100 souls, his soul will be free. Which is kind of a crazy thing to think about, that if Jack wants to be free, he has to find 100 willing people to go and serve on Davy Jones's crew.
Because the movie makes it play out like when they go back to Tortuga, like they're going to be capturing people to like give them their souls over to Davy Jones, but then that never happens.
Well,
so that was sort of confusing to me.
They do take a couple people with them,
right? But it's not 100.
But it's not 100 because they can't find 100 that are actually willing to go. So he knows that he's doomed, which is the whole thing. Like, I think he is still trying to go find the chest even without the key, because he's like, if I can find the chest, surely someone will find the key, whether it's me or Will or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think maybe he kind of gave Will to him, kind of like try to kill two birds with one stone as well.
Because at the end of the movie, Will is
you can't
still
find the
with-
key and find the chest in the amount of time that he has left, because he's like a couple days or something that he has to find 100 souls. So I think maybe that had something to do with it too. It's a pretty interesting plot that they came up with,
At the
and
end
it
of the
kind of
movie
gets lost
is Will-
in the mystifying atmosphere
Yes.
that they create.
Right. They kind of, I'm not going to say it's a bad plot or badly written, because it's not. But
No.
they do use a lot of the, hey, look at this cool thing over here, and don't get confused by the somewhat
Absolutely.
confusing.
Yeah.
Because it worked on me, because now I can't recall what. At the end of the movie, was Will still with Davy Jones, or was Jack with Davy Jones?
At the end of the movie?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that either of them are.
Yeah, because aren't they have to go back and save somebody?
No.
Explain it to me, please. Explain it to me.
You got it.
Take
Take it away.
Plenty of the crew died, but the only one that went down with the Kraken was Jack.
Yeah, and we can take a look at that. I actually have a clip of that.
Okay.
So apparently, this scene.
Do you like retelling me movies that we saw?
Yeah. So apparently, while the script was being written, Keira Knightley actually suggested this scene where they're on the ship. It's Jack and her, and just the two of them, where she handcuffs him to the ship in this scene that we're about to watch.
Because
it's kind of confusing. I've actually got a couple
Jack.
clips that we may have to watch back to back because I've had to cut them down some.
Right.
But speaking of the Kraken apparently was really difficult to animate as it had no real life reference. And so animation director Hal T. Hickle instructed the crew to watch King Kong versus Godzilla from 1963, which apparently had a real octopus crawling over miniatures, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Oh, cool.
So that's one I've not seen. It's on my list. I actually think I own it now, the King Kong one. But I thought that was kind of interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at this a couple clips here with Jack and the Kraken.
You came back.
I think the most attractive that a woman has ever looked in any movie ever. Just gonna throw that out there. I know everybody's big on Sydney Sweeney nowadays, but Keira Knightley in Dead Man's Chest is just another level, man.
Yep.
I thought this was interesting too because she kisses him, which I think was partly her idea. Keira Knightley, not just the character. But Will sees it, and he's not even sure, I think, how to take it. And I think maybe that gets resolved later in another movie. But no one sees her actually chain him to the ship.
It's after you, not the ship. It's not us.
Right. So she's doing
This is the only way that you see.
supposedly to save the crew.
Yeah.
And
because essentially Davy Jones is sending the Kraken to come and get Jack. And I mean that's really what it boils down to. Which how that he is able to direct the Kraken in any way, shape, or form is still a mystery to me, because we were kind of talking about it. But I have a clip that we're not going to watch that is them on the ship, spinning the Kraken call around, and it's this giant pillar that slams down, and you see a sound wave go off. So I would guess that is the Kraken call, but how the heck does he Kraken, go get that ship?
Right, yeah. I mean, I guess you could write it off as being oh, it's magical.
Yeah, I guess.
Just the Force in Star Wars.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
But it's interesting that a character moment for her, though, because it really is her moment of essentially becoming like Jack, becoming like a pirate, where she really does just throw him under the bus completely, not knowing really if he is going to survive or not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty crazy.
You did mention that the Kraken call is similar to Dune.
Yeah, it's like the little thing that they call the sandworms with.
Yeah. Do they even give that a name in Dune?
Probably.
Thumper?
Shlipushka or something. You know,
is it like is it a thumper?
Some sort of
Is that what
Fremen
they're
word.
called?
Yeah, no, I think they might call it a thumper.
I think they call it a thumper. I don't know. I need to watch
Like
Dune
the
again,
rabbit.
apparently. I've seen it a couple times, but not enough, I guess, to understand what they call the sandworm calling device. So I have another clip, actually, that's almost immediately after that. In fact, I think it is basically immediately after that, where you actually get to see the Kraken. And I would also liken that to Dune as well, and the sandworm. Like, they're very similar, like, in terms of how you call them and, like, what they actually look like and are terrifying. Which, you know,
Yeah, because there's the mouth, right?
One has giant tentacles. The other is just a worm. But the mouth, striking similarity there.
Yeah. Isn't that like a sort of like an exaggerated squid's mouth?
I think so, yes.
Shape.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, his hat.
Well, does it yell at him or burp at him?
A little of both.
It's a little of both, maybe.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah, it's freaking nasty. Whatever that slime stuff is gross. But he does get his hat back.
I will say, him doing this made me laugh. Like, I didn't know, like, the scale of him next to the monster and, like, reacting the way he does and still just being Jack Sparrow made me laugh. And I feel like it wasn't supposed to be funny in that way.
I mean,
it still does
great.
work, though, within the context of the movie. But they almost made the Kraken too big so that when you show Jack in comparison to it, it's just laughable that he's, like, going up to it with the sword. But
I mean, it's a Kraken. Like, you have to make it
sacrificing
huge.
himself, I guess, right? I mean, is that what we're meant to believe?
I mean,
maybe he intends
yes.
to fight it, but he's essentially letting himself get
Yes,
taken,
but
right?
I mean, like, immediately after that clip ends, he jumps into the mouth, and then he goes down with the ship. So,
and there's a sound.
Yeah, as far as you know, yeah, definitely. As
I don't know if there is, but there probably
as far as we know, I mean, at the end of that, you know, he's down for the count, man.
Yeah.
Like the
So
thing.
it
ate him.
is kind of a heroic act on Jack's part as well.
Yeah.
You know, of staying there
Yeah.
and facing the Kraken.
Well, and I think Elizabeth in the last scene, I think, actually goes up to him because she's like, "Oh, see, you do care. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're not just this, you know, terrible pirate that everyone thinks you are. Like, you're actually a really good guy." So that's part of it too, I think.
Yeah. Which you said this before, but Jack's whole thing and all that and that sort of character style, that character archetype, is one of my like favorites. And I guess that's why the pirate movies in general are cool, right? Is, you know, someone that's supposedly a scoundrel and does all these things, but they do have, you know, some sort of a moral compass. You know, they're not the evil that they're essentially made out to be or even appear to be, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's pirates throughout history that were like completely merciless, right, Christian?
Yes.
Like,
but it's it's the same thing that's what's appealing about when you look up like the like 30s like gangster stuff, right? Where it's like Al Capone was a despicable human being.
Yeah.
But then like the people of Chicago were like, no, Al Capone's great. Like, he creates city parks and he donates money to our charities, and, you know, he fixed little Jimmy's broken leg.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a, you know.
Yeah. There's you know, a little up and down. So, you know, that I feel like people that are like an Al Capone, like, yes, they do evil things, but they also like want to keep people on their side so everyone doesn't just turn on them.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what you see with Jack a lot of the time.
You never know what's truly him being moralistic or what he's doing to play the long game to keep himself in a better position.
Absolutely.
And even watching the movies, like, you could go back and watch scenes like this, like the whole plot of this movie, like the giving will to Davy Jones. It's like, you could argue, yes, I mean, that was him playing the long game, you know, of trying to keep himself safe, but there also maybe was some sort of a moral thing to it. You know, you never really know, which is what keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's, you know, so many things about this movie that are just fantastic. One of which we actually played after the movie, and that is Liar's Dice.
And we got into an argument as well.
We did. So I actually have the rules for Liar's Dice that I will.
Now wait.
Go ahead.
We should say when you had this, Christian, did the DVD you had, did it have this DVD game, or was it only on the Blu-ray?
I don't remember playing the game. I do remember the CGI behind the scenes clip.
Yeah.
But I do not remember if that game was in there. I feel like it would have been.
Yeah. But it might just be on the Blu-ray. I don't know. But shout out to DVD games.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of them in my
Well,
time.
and that one's fun. And like, there's actually like parts of the crew, like Jack's crew that are there. Like,
yeah,
that
I
actually
want to know
filmed
how
this
much
thing.
those guys got paid to come back for like those 2 or 3 hours work.
Yeah, who
of
knows,
just filming
man.
stuff for the Disney put in money for these character actors to put on the costumes, sit in a crappy set, and do this for the DVD game.
Mm-hmm.
They put in this much work for the DVD game.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It was fun. Like, we had a good time. So I do have the rules here. So Liar's Dice is a gambling game where each player has to make consecutively higher bids based upon how many of each die they claim are on the table. So 2 3s, 4 5s, etc., until a player is called a liar, in which case all the dice are shown and it's seen if the bid is correct. Now, normally a player only loses a die when they're caught in a lie, and they're not out of the game until they've lost all of their dice. So it is based on all of the dice that are in play on the table is what you're going off of. So let's actually watch the clip here of Liar's Dice, and then we'll talk a little bit about that.
It's your bid, Captain. 4 4.
Four 5s.
6 3s.
The shots here of them like showing the dice are super cool.
7 5.
Then you see Will's dice, you see his dad's dice.
8 5s. Welcome to the crew line. 12 5s. 12 5s. Call me a liar. We're up the bed. And be called a liar myself for my trouble. Bootstrap belt, you're a liar, and you will spend an eternity on this ship.
So it's
Okay, watching that
interesting.
scene again, I was still confused.
Okay, so I'll explain this. So when Davy Jones, so he says 7 5s. He had lifted up his deal. He has 4 5s. So with what Will had said previously for the number of 5s, which I think was 4 5s, he's going to think that Davy at least has one, because Will has 3. So when he says 7 5s, Will is
He's
then
talking about the table.
Yes, the whole table. So
Yeah.
then Will has to up it or call him a liar, but he knows he has 3 5s. So he
says 8.
He says 8 5s, banking on that his dad has a 5, and his dad, whenever they reveal his dice, does not have a 5. So technically, if Will was called a liar, which Davy Jones was about to do, he would have lost
the whole thing.
He would have lost, and he would be stuck on the ship. His dad says 12 5s, which is almost impossible for that to be true. So he knows Davy's going to call him a liar at this point. So he saves Will, and he had just been freed too. That's what was crazy. There before this scene, they actually played a game, and Will beat Davy Jones, and his father's freedom was what was on the line. So then he asks if he wants to play another game. He puts down the drawing of the key, which is then shown. I cut all that out because we were trying to focus more on just the game rather than the whole plot. But it is it was really cool that they've got this game in the middle of this movie, and it was kind of confusing on how to play. But Will apparently was like actually really good at it, but he would have lost. And so the whole movie falls apart if his dad does not save his butt there. But I thought whenever we were watching it, I couldn't figure out why his dad would have saved him, because I thought there were 8 5s in play. I thought Will had 4 and Davy had 4. But when I watched it again, Will only had 3. So technically he was lying. And if he had been called a liar and they had raised all their dice, he would have lost.
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting game. Speaking of, that is one item of merchandise that I had that was sold after this movie. I actually have a picture of that in the folder. So they had, instead of calling it Liar's Dice, it is Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest Pirates Dice, a game of high seas deception. So it comes with like 4 cups. It's got some, I think 4 sets of dice.
Picture.
Yes.
The cups are cool.
It's got 4 cups. It looks very similar to what you see on the movie. But I thought that was kind of cool. I know Christian said there was a video game. There's tons of merchandise with these movies. There's shirts, there's hats, you name it. There's Davy Jones costumes. Like these are the most famous pirate movies, I would say. And this one especially because of how like big it was. There's tons and tons of merchandise, but I thought that the pirate game, Pirate Dice, was pretty cool. That maybe
it's cool they actually made it.
Maybe we should get it and play it sometime. Just gonna throw that out there. That picture that I got is from an eBay listing, so I didn't look to see how much it was, but I might have to get it. I think it was like $35 or something.
As we're playing that, I'd be like, no, hold on. What are the?
Yeah, you'd be so confused. So anyway, we played this like on the DVD. On the Blu-ray as like a special feature, which was fun. Like we sat there and like put in our bids, and I think we were kind of confused on how to play because Braxton did not agree with me on how the game was played. He's like, no, you have to do your dice first and then go off of theirs. I still think
that's true.
No, it's not. It's not true at all.
That's what the instructions
I just read the instructions to you. But I did think that was pretty cool. That whole scene is really cool with all the Liar's Dice stuff. And it was cool that they then, did some stuff with it and we're like, hey, we made this game. Let's put it on a special feature and let's make a game for it. And you don't see that a ton. How many movies make up board games?
Right, not that many nowadays.
Yeah.
It used to be a lot.
Okay, so I do have one other fun fact here. So the scene when Jack Sparrow calls Davy Jones a fish face and then sings to them, I got a jar of dirt, I got a jar of dirt. Apparently that whole thing was unscripted and improvised by Johnny Depp. So most of the reactions of the rest of the characters were real.
Also, that meme has like almost outlived the movie. The I've got a jar of dirt.
I've got a jar of dirt.
I would say there are much better meme candidates within this movie than I've got a jar of dirt. For some reason, that's just had a huge life.
It's because it's funny. Like he says it's funny. Why, but it's so random. Like it's just good, man. So yeah, that's funny that scene was improvised. I thought that was pretty cool. We have one more scene to look at here, and it is potentially one of the funniest, if not the funniest scene, especially with the cutting. This one, I don't have the cutting back and forth between like it is in the movie. This is just the straight up scene of the cages that they're in the cannibal village. So let's take a look at that.
It's like it's supposed to be like invoking a circus act, right? Like it's shot so well. And you can tell like it's real. Like it looks
It's so funny, man.
Put your legs through, start the climb!
Start the climb.
Come on, men! It'll take all of us to throw the black ball!
Actually, you wouldn't need everyone! About 6 would do!
Oh dear.
Actually, you wouldn't need everyone. About 6 would do.
One of my notes, y'all are gonna love this.
Mhm.
One of my notes after this scene, after Will's ball gets up to the top, was the Indian guy's ball died. Period. This is nuts. Period. Because you remember when that happened, when they fell down, I was like, "Are they dead?"
Yes, they are
Did
dead.
they just die?
Yep.
Like, it's pretty crazy to have like named and like face characters just plummet and die. And the fact that they it's wild that they say, "Yeah, do you like what are these cages made out of?" And they're like, "Do you notice the rest of the crew?"
Yeah, they're made.
So they
he
killed
no,
him.
he says these cages weren't here when we got here.
That's crazy, dude. That's insane.
Yeah, they made them out of bones of the crew that they ate, I would assume.
And then put the other crew in there and hung them.
And Jack somehow is like seen as a god and as a leader, and he's about to be sacrificed at this point. Like, it is
right. He doesn't realize that his
hilarious.
whole purpose is to be sacrificed.
Yeah.
Even though they're honoring him.
Well, I think he sort of does. He's just trying to buy himself some time from them just straight up eating him to begin with. I'm pretty sure that there's some of that in play as well. But this, there's in not only just in the bone balls, but in the scene after they they find the chest, or they're on like an island and there's an old mill and stuff. There's some like cool stunts in this, where the balls, they roll down the hill and then eventually, they can't keep up because of the way that it moves, and they just end up like flipping around over and over in it. And then like there's a stunt where they have a sword fight on like a old like
on
water mill wheel. Yeah, it's pretty cool,
and the
man.
That whole time, aren't they fighting over the chest?
They are fighting over the key.
Or the key.
I'm pretty sure they are fighting over the key.
But,
yes, because it's Will
he's trying to
and
get
the Lord Norrington or whatever his name is, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
which he looks like a homeless person in this.
I love that they brought him back. And he's in this position. I love that so much. It's amazing.
It's really cool.
I have to say this, which maybe we can go over this next. I think my favorite sequence of the movie is them escaping the island.
That part's great. Yeah.
I think that's my favorite. Like, again, like I think they could make a whole movie out of that.
Well, and just the whole island sequence as well, because like they find the chest and then like Will magically shows up because he rode in on sea turtles, which I believe Jack said is how they got back to the ship on the first one. I think that was a callback to Curse of the Black
Which was
Pearl.
a lie, but yes, that's what Jack claimed.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's what Jack said he did.
Hair.
So yeah, it ends up coming back for this one, but they use basically the same line. Just
What
Will
is
says it
y'all's,
instead
like,
of Jack. But
favorite scene or sequence in the movie?
Yeah, they in this deal, they found the chest, but they can't decide what they actually want to do with it, because Jack wants to use it as leverage for his freedom. I think Will wants to use it to free his dad and the crew. Lord Norrington wants to take it back so he can be reinstated in his position. So there's like a lot of conflicting interests here about this. This chest and the heart of Davy Jones that's inside it. And so there's a really cool scene that comes out of it as they're escaping, and the heart gets put in the jar of dirt and then taken back out of the jar of dirt. And, there's a lot of different things that happen during this, but their fight on the beach is really cool as well, where they're having like a 3-way fight, and Elizabeth is just yelling at them to stop fighting, stop being childish. Yeah. And then like Davy Jones and his crew show up, they go on, there's all this like crazy stunts and stuff. That whole scene, like from the time that they arrive to that island to the time that they get off, is awesome. Like it is very cool, very captivating.
So what is y'all's favorite?
That is my favorite.
Christian, what's yours?
Favorite scene in the movie?
Yeah, or scene or sequence of scenes,
My favorite scene, which I believe we have a video of, is Jack's character introduction
We do
in
a
this
video.
movie. And if you go back to the first movie, it's one of the best character introductions ever, which is where he's in this small skiff and the thing's sinking, and it sinks just perfectly to where he's up on the mast and he can take his first step onto the pier as the boat sinks. But this one, I think, frames his character perfectly, fits right in with that first character introduction, and just introduces him as a guy who always finds himself in these situations, but whether it's luck or his own like personal cunning, he always gets himself out of it. So
yeah.
I'm already laughing about it.
Like, this is how it opens. Like, we don't understand really what is happening here.
Or what we're seeing. Like,
yeah, like, why are they throwing coffins into the ocean? Now, I'm sure because of this, they had to put some disclaimer, no animals were harmed in the making of this movie.
Because visually, like, the way that looks, like, there's no blood and guts from that bird.
It explodes.
But the way it explodes is so, like, explicit. It's surprising.
Yeah. And
his
Jack's
theme immediately kicks in.
Gosh, it's so good. He pulls out the guy's leg.
Mind if we make a little side trip?
Oh man, that seems great. It's so good.
Christian, you said you watched this in the theater, you think?
I think I did.
Possible?
I did not watch the first one in the theater. I don't know if I saw the first one before I even saw this one.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think you said that, right? That you may have just went and saw this one.
I don't think I watched this in the theater. I don't think my parents took me. In fact, I'm not sure that I had seen any of the Pirates of the Caribbean until 4. And I think I watched 4 in theaters, and then I went back and watched the first 3 because I'd never seen them before.
I have never seen any of them in the theater.
Really?
I wish Disney would do a re-release of like the first 3.
Dang, man.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, that would be. I don't know why they wouldn't. So
yeah, because they're Disney when they don't.
Yeah,
do that.
well, they should have done it last year when it was like the 20th anniversary. Yeah. They could have done but of the first one, they could have played all 3.
Yeah, yeah. I'm surprised that. Yeah, in 2023 that there wasn't a 20-year thing.
Yeah, who knows,
Let's
man.
see in 2026 if
sometimes Disney just sucks, you know.
Yeah.
They make masterpieces like this, and then they make complete duds. And they.
Do you remember when you first saw
fans.
this? Yeah. What was your or like anyone's reaction to the beginning of the movie and him shooting the bird off of the coffin and it exploding?
Probably applause.
I don't remember.
And the gun.
The one thing I don't remember the theater experience for this one. I do remember watching At World's End in the theater, and I remember the backlash afterward where people were like, "Is this too dark for Disney?"
Oh, really?
Because they're singing at the gallows.
It does get pretty dark.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it gets pretty dark at World's End. At World's Wind. Whatever the heck I'm saying. Minecraft server.
I got a few more notes here.
Okay.
I want to go through any of them. Oh, the other thing is okay, when they're going to what's the lady's name? The like witch woman?
Theodoma.
Okay. Her like going up to her cabin in like the bayou, the swamp.
That was cool.
Looks just like when you're on the ride in the beginning. Because the guys is when you get on Pirates of the Caribbean is that you're in like New Orleans and you leave New Orleans, go through like a swamp, like a Louisiana swamp, and then you go down to like a secret thing and you're in like the Pirates area. But before all that, you're going through like a spooky bayou at night, which is what that whole her area looks like, which is a cool thing.
Yeah, that was cool. This movie is incredibly dense. Like I know
there's tons of
I know
stuff in
we've
it.
taken a look at several clips tonight. Like you could take almost any scene from the movie and play it as a clip on here and be like, "Oh yeah, this is so cool because of this." Because it's just like there's not a dull moment in it. Like there's always something happening, and it's always some war between, you know, Jack Sparrow and his crew and Davy Jones, or Will and Davy Jones, or I mean, there's always like some sort of conflict happening in this movie. Like very seldom is there not some sort of conflict happening, or there's problem solving, like being at in the bayou, where they're trying to figure out like how to resolve the problem that they have. So it's like even that scene is great because there is a number of things that happen, but him like having the black mark on his hand, and she realizes it and then gives him a jar of dirt because that's going to help him. He's like, a jar of dirt is going to help me. And she's like, do you not want it? Like, I can take it back. Right. He's like, no, I'll keep it. And then he's happy about it. And he sings, I got a jar of dirt. I got a jar. So, I mean, there's just, I don't know. We could clip the whole movie and put it in here.
Yeah, I also wrote down Davy Jones's ship cresting, like breaching out of the water like a submarine.
Yeah.
Is amazing.
Yeah.
And the scene where he's playing like the organ.
With his
Number
tentacles.
one, the music is awesome.
Yeah.
But the scene is awesome. The organ itself is really cool.
Because it's made out of like barnacles, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, freaking cool. Are we ready for a bingo?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go through the ones that I have marked, and then we'll see if there's any that we missed.
Okay.
There's a peg leg because Davy Jones has a.
Is it really a peg leg though?
Not a physical peg leg, but some sort of sea creature peg leg. He does because at the beginning of the shot when it's under the water,
he's like a crab, right? It's like a crab, like a big crab leg.
Crab, I guess.
Yeah, but I would say
leg.
it's meant to mimic. It's meant to put that visual in
the
your
image
mind.
of a peg leg in your head.
Okay.
There's a treasure chest, except the treasure is
a heart.
A heart.
The heart of the.
There's rum because Jack complains about the rum.
Yep. Well, don't they put the rum in the ship to blow it up at the beginning?
They do, yeah. There's several sword fights. There's cannon fire. There's obviously the 18th century ships. I would say that a curse, being cursed and being put on Davy Jones' crew, counts as a curse.
Yeah, right? For sure. That's definitely a curse.
There's like not anything more cursy than that.
Yeah, well, I guess I suppose that it's an interesting play on the curse because you're willingly joining, right? That's the sort of dirty secret, is that you join thinking it's some sort of a relief, but it's actually a curse.
It's like an extortion attempt.
I think that I'm going to say that there's a parrot on the shoulder, even though it's never exactly on his shoulder. But what's his name, Mr. Smith or something? He has a really plain name. He still has his parrot.
There was a knife between the teeth. And a knife
there's the Royal Navy,
sail, right?
There's the West Country accent. There's a tricorn hat. There's a pirate will be executed because there's a thing about when they're trying to get Will, right? Sort of at the beginning.
Oh, they execute a pirate right at the beginning.
Oh yeah, I guess that is true.
They slice his throat and throw him overboard.
Yeah, but you're right, Ryan. There was both a cutlass within the teeth and going down the thing and the knife right next to each other, which is amazing.
Now, do we have yarn being on the sails as a trope?
What do you mean by that?
It's technically not a trope, I guess. Like to tell the wind direction, they have yarn like on the sails in this one.
No.
That I physically noticed.
Interesting. I didn't notice that, but that's cool.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with them like reading the wind. It just made me think of Ford versus Ferrari, where they're trying to like figure out the aerodynamics of the Ford vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
And they tie the yarn all over it, and they're getting wind reads off of that. I just noticed, I can't remember which ship it was on, but I'm pretty sure they show like a kind of like a wider shot, like from the top. And you can see like some sort of like rope or yarn or something tied to the sail. And it's like all down in rows.
Oh, cool. Interesting. They do say the word pirate.
Do they say Aargh?
No, they don't say Aargh. There is a Kraken. We got that one down.
We do.
The only other movie that has a Kraken is Sinbad.
So far.
Gibbets, again, at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Right, the little cages.
Yep.
They go to Tortuga, and they run her aground. They run the ship aground on the beach.
Yeah, you know what the deal is with gibbets, right?
What?
They make you get in there, and you have to say gibbet, gibbet, like a frog.
I gotta go. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think there's less in this one than was in the first one, but only by a few.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, there's not like a ton of like swashbuckling. Like, there's a lot more. I don't know, just like story in this one. I feel like than there is like action.
Yeah, there's more character stuff for sure.
Yeah. Well,
I
it
think
ends
there
kind
would
of
be
on
a
a
sea
cliffhanger
shanty.
too.
Don't they sing at some point? Does the Dutchman's Crew, don't they sing?
Sing, maybe.
Or something? A sea shanty? Or am I wrong?
I don't know. That didn't ring a bell. Do you remember one, Christian?
Mm-mm.
And the first one they did because they sang the song. They say, yo ho,
Yo
Pirate's Life for Me.
Oh, isn't that that's in At World's End, right?
That's another one.
Right? At World's
Wait,
End?
that's from At World's End?
Yeah, it's called Hoist the Colors. Yeah.
I thought that was from like a pirate
No.
video game or something.
No,
like from
most
the past
of
like
the-
year or two.
Most of like the iconic songs from the trilogy are in At World's End. Like, you have the themes and stuff, but like that one, the opening scene or whatever is.
Dang, I'm excited to watch it now.
It's good.
Very
dude.
excited to watch it.
It is super good. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our ratings.
Damn it. I
Does
forgot
one of
to rate
y'all
it.
want to
Wait a
start?
minute.
Would you like me to start?
I'll start.
If you're unfamiliar with our ratings, we have a scale that we call the pieces of 8. So we rank them on a general scale and a piratiness scale from 0 to 8. So Christian, go ahead, start us off, man.
With the piratiness, I give it a full 8 marks. Yeah, full 8 pieces of 8. And for every other possible rating scale, I would also give it an 8. I would give this one I would consider this one the pinnacle of pirate movies, and I would give it full marks all around. I would say not only does it belong in the Hall of Fame, but this should like have its own display.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Alternate log line. An octopus man follows his heart to reunite a father and son. So,
wow.
You're
I can't believe I didn't ask you about that earlier when we were going over our description.
An octopus man follows his heart to reunite a father and son.
That's genius.
That's
Genius.
amazing.
Well, genius. I'll go ahead and go. So I have a general just 8 out of 8. I mean, this movie is incredible. I mean, I'm a big fan of all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, even 4, which I know kind of gets a bad rap. I think they're all just fantastic. And then piratiness, I was kind of debating whether to go 7.5 or 8. I think I'm just going to go ahead and go 8. I mean, there's so many things about this that are piratey. I think the first one maybe has a little bit more of like a pirate flavor to it than this one does. But this one, I feel like maybe even dives more into some curse stuff, and it's more central around like a crew that is cursed. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to go ahead and give it an 8, and we'll just roll 8 and 8 on this one. And I mean, this movie's incredible. Like, I can't fault it for too much, for sure.
So I was kind of thinking along the same lines, Ryan, where I was thinking, maybe I think this is a little bit less piratey than the first one. But then I was like, well, if this isn't 8 out of 8 piratey, though, then what is?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could say it's 7.95 or something. But
yeah, very close.
It's 8 out of 8. And yeah, I think I would also, I will say I like the first one better. But I think, as a movie still, that it's 8 out of 8.
Yeah. I mean,
even though I prefer the first one, I think it's still operating on the same level, firing on all cylinders as the first one.
And the first one, I feel like, could just be a standalone movie. Like this one kind of ends on a cliffhanger.
And I think that's why I like it better.
It kind of ends on a cliffhanger. It like feeds straight into At World's End, which I mean, they shot them back to back, but the movie timeline is also back to back on these two. Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl is kind of more localized in its own movie. It doesn't really feed into anything else. So I think maybe that kind of has a little bit of a factor of why maybe you like the first one better than the second one. I mean, Christian clearly doesn't. He thinks this one is the best by far. And I think that is the consensus of a large portion of the population that enjoys these movies, is that the second one is the best. I think it's a toss-up. I really like both of them. I can't necessarily say that I like one more than the other. The first one is fantastic, but I think potentially the villain of Davy Jones, I think, is potentially one of the best villains in any movie, much less just the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. So it's hard to separate the two and be like, oh, I really like the first one because of this. I really like the second one because of this. I mean, they're pretty even playing field, I think, in terms of how I feel about them. And I'm sure that's how a lot of people feel about them as well. Second one is fantastic. And I think what they've achieved through a CGI standpoint is still like very hard to beat today, if it's even possible to be beaten today. Like whatever magic that they put into that.
Yeah. And more so than just how good it looks, the creativity that they had in developing the characters before the CGI even came into play.
Absolutely.
Is cool. And then that they use the CGI effectively to create the character is the icing on the cake, basically.
Yeah, it's great. I think this one is pretty unanimous. I'm just going to ask for for a formality's sake, but should this be inducted into the rated Aargh Pirate Cinematic Universe?
Yeah, and it should have its own exhibit, as Christian said.
I agree. I mean, this one's fantastic. I mean, I'm sure we'll probably induct all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, if I had to guess. We'll see when the time comes. But they're just a really freaking solid franchise that they've done at Disney. I just wish that they would get over themselves and make a sixth one. So
yeah, they need to make in my opinion, if they make a sixth one, they need to not have any returning characters. It needs to be. It either needs to be only the returning characters or a completely separate story. You know what I mean? Doing it like midway where they have like Jack Sparrow back, but then no one else. I don't think that's the way to go.
Yeah, that's not the way to go. I don't think
either
you make it with a complete
or tell a new story in the same universe.
I mean, it might work. I don't know that it works as well without Jack Sparrow and Johnny Depp. Just for an audience standpoint, like people will not go watch it if he's not in the movie.
Yeah,
like that's just a fact. So like if they don't cast him back as Johnny Depp or as Jack Sparrow, there's no reason to even make the movie. Like people will riot against it and will not go watch it.
He's so associated with it that
Yeah. I mean, he is synonymous with Jack Sparrow. And I think if you just said, oh, we're going to do away with the 5 movies story and bring in all new characters and start another, like just make a standalone movie, I don't know if that works either, because people would just be like, oh, you're just trying to reuse IP. Because if you call it Pirates of the Caribbean, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like people would probably be kind of outraged about that. My opinion.
Yeah. But either way, I'd rather an original story than any sort of remake.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
With Pirates, even though it's reusing IP, I still feel like there's stuff to be mined from a creativity standpoint from all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's almost time for us to take this ship to port, but before we do, we wanted to make sure you found our proverbial message in a bottle detailing next month's movie of choice. So coming December 10th, we will be taking a look at a stop-motion movie from 2012, The Pirates Band of Misfits. You guys excited about that one?
Wait, is that really what we're watching next?
Yes, that's what we're watching next.
The like Wallace and Gromit version of Pirates?
Yeah. It's supposed to be hilarious. So it should be fun.
Okay.
I'm all in.
It should be fun. I think our pirate. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this one out there. I think preliminarily the piratiness scale on that one might be an 8. Just going to throw it out there.
It might be.
I think they went a little too overboard. So I think there's a good chance we'll have an 8 on our piratiness score. But we'll see. We'll see after we watch it. I don't think any of us have seen that one before.
No.
So that one will be a first
Run.
watch for us. Do what?
I love Chicken Run.
Yeah, it's true. Sure, we do love
And these
Chicken
people
Run.
made Chicken Run.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're looking forward to watching The Pirates. So thank you guys for watching. We hope you enjoyed Dead Man's Chest. We can't wait to see where our next adventure takes us.